Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 124 for Wednesday, October 1st, 2025. Ooh, it's spooky in here. Start of October already. I am joined by Mario Sanders. My name is Justin Young. And Mario, how have you been?
I'm doing pretty good. I know I've said it the past couple of weeks, but Friday is now the official start of my prelims, so it's really kind of ramping up. October will be a stressful month, but...
Explain to our listeners who maybe don't know what prelims are for a PhD candidate.
Yeah, so for our program, they're different, whatever program you're in or wherever you go. But for our program in particular, it involved me writing 3 question proposals with my advisor. I then sent those off to my committee. We had a meeting to discuss them. I answered whatever questions they had about them. And then from those proposals, we have a 3-person committee at this point for me in the program. Each of them took one of the proposals and crafted a question based on it. And then on Friday, I will receive those 3 questions and I will have 30 days from that period. I don't know what day it actually is. I think it'd be like November 2nd or something like that, where I have to answer those questions. And so for us, it's basically 30 days to write 3 20 to 25 page papers. So it's a pretty intense month, at least from people who talk about it, but I'm as prepared as I can be, I guess, or at least as prepared as I'm going to be.
And this is based off of your reading list that you constructed?
We don't really have a reading list because we craft those proposals. We can kind of design them in a particular way, but we don't have a reading list that we submit to an advisor that an advisor submits to us.
Okay. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I know at least you have fall break coming up, and
yeah, I have a couple of days, and October is a pretty light month for the class that I'm teaching. We've got a lot of workshop days. There's an exam day. So days where there's not a ton of like teaching that's actually required of me or like prep work that's required of me. There'll be some grading at some point that'll get busy, but that's stuff that I can save for at least once they're done.
Yeah. All right.
How about you? How have you been, Justin? Now that since there's been a number of episodes with only the 2 of us, I feel like I haven't asked how you've been doing.
I've been okay. This was a pretty light weekend after last weekend. So I did see the new Leonardo DiCaprio film, One Battle After Another. I
hadn't even heard of that.
Yeah, it's Paul Thomas Anderson.
Okay.
And I will catch a lot of flack from film bros for saying this.
Okay.
It's good. It is not amazing.
Okay. I feel like there's one other person who I heard them talking about a new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, so it must be this one. Mm-hmm. And I think they kind of said the same thing of like certain people are going to lift this up as this is the greatest film of all time, and it's fine.
I have already listened to professional reviewers saying that this is the film of the decade.
Wow.
Like this is a defining film in the history of film. And I just like, it's very well made. It is too long by like 30 minutes. Like it should be cut.
How long is it?
I feel like it's 2.5 hours,
okay.
But like I may have that wrong.
Okay.
But it feels like the movie goes on way too long.
Mm-hmm.
So not that the ending is unnecessary, but just it could have been trimmed along the way.
It drags. You know, a lot of movies are guilty of that.
And, it is a very of the moment film. It is about politics and immigration and the abuse of immigrants. Mm. So like that is important. But I don't think necessarily the way that it handles that is the most interesting. There's some very good performances, especially a younger actress who plays his daughter in the film. Mm-hmm. I can't think of her name right now, but she's quite good in the film. And so there's definitely things that are positive about it. It's got a strong cast just from looking at
at it right now.
Yeah, Benicio del Toro is in it as well, and it's
Also, you were generous. It's 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Okay. I mean,
maybe 2 hours and 30 minutes is what you're hoping for.
I figured whatever I said, it was going to be longer because it felt longer. It could be 30 minutes shorter, like easily. And you know, like it's Paul Thomas Anderson. There's always a sort of quirkiness and a winking at the audience in his films, I feel like. And this film does that at times, which I think sort of undermine the more interesting things going on in it. But it's well made. Like, I don't think it's a movie that, I don't think it's a bad movie. I do think it's a movie that some people will go see and absolutely detest. You know, like there are certain, it's the sort of movie I would not recommend to everyone because I just don't think it will connect with some people. But I do think there are people who are going to walk away from this film going, this is the greatest thing ever. And, you know, I read some comments online, people talking about this should win every Oscar this year. And I was like, what are we doing?
I was going to say, I imagine this will get, regardless of how any individual feels about it, I'm sure a ton of Oscar buzz then.
Yeah. I mean, and some of that will be very well earned. Some of it probably less so. I am not a big Leonardo DiCaprio fan. I think he can be good. I think he has talent, but I think, you know, in this, he's maybe the least interesting part of the film.
He feels like one of those actors where it's at the point, regardless of the movie he's in, he gets nominated for Best Actor for at least 3 of the Oscars. But which is interesting because I know that there's, you know, it's not to say that he's not bad, but every lead role doesn't have to get nominated. It's maybe not deserving of getting nominated.
You know, I probably don't, well, I know I don't today nearly as much as I once did, but there was a time in my career where I watched so many movies, lots of little small indie films and like movies you'd never heard of before. And, you know, each year as they were coming out and everything. And when I was doing that, I got into the habit of just telling people like, yeah, like it doesn't matter who wins the awards because the best films are rarely even nominated.
It's all kind of there's a lot of politicking that goes on with those award shows.
I was very impressed last year that Flow won Best Animated Film because that is exactly the sort of film that often gets ignored at the Oscars. And that is an amazing and good film. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, I think there are other more interesting films, you know, that have already come out that will come out by the end of the year. But it's not bad, you know, I'm not going to like sing it as the greatest thing ever. You know, somebody will listen to this and write me an angry letter now. Like, you just don't understand it.
This guy doesn't get film.
Yeah. Yeah. I had students before who told me I didn't get film because I didn't think Christopher Nolan was the greatest filmmaker ever. And I was like, he's good. Like, I feel like it's my nephew when we were traveling last weekend. He asked me had I played Claire Obscure, and I was like, yeah. And he was like, what'd you think of it? And I said, oh, it'll be in my top 10 of the year. And he said, it's not number 1. And I said it'll be in my top 10. He said, yeah, but that implies it'll be low. And I said, does it? I said, I haven't made out my top 10 yet.
You mean it's going to be in your top 1? Is that what you meant to say?
I was like, I don't know. When I say a film's going to be in my, or a movie or a game is going to be in my top 10, like, to me, that's pretty prestigious.
Well, and I think that might just be I mean, I don't know how much your nephew plays, but for somebody that plays as many games as you, a top 10, you know, if you're playing 30 to 50 games in a year is a lot. If somebody's only playing 10 games a year.
Right.
Being your top 10 is like, well, yeah, that's everything is going to be my top 10.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a good point. And that's something I remember telling a class of students one time. They were like, what's your favorite film? I said, oh, I hate doing that. I said, I could give you like my top 10 or top 20. And I had a student go, 20? I don't think I've ever seen 20 movies. I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, I probably saw 20 films this year at least. I know this year I've seen at least 20 in the theater alone. So I am very much, I could very much make a top 20 just this year. Some of those films do not deserve to be in that top 20. All right, why don't we move on to what we've been playing? Because I have a few things to talk about. What do you have to talk about, Mario?
Yeah, so I've played a couple of things. The first one, I know last week I had talked about, and you had talked about also watching Mega Bonk.
Yeah.
I ended up buying it. I think I'd bought it actually before we had started, but it was literally right before we had started. And so I played that a pretty good amount. And that's a fun game. It is. It's very much a Survivors style game.
A Vampire
Survivors. And it's, I think the way that I've described it to most people is it feels like if you took Risk of Rain and blended it with Vampire Survivors. It's a lot of fun. It's silly. It's got sort of the meme internet humor, which is fine, but it's got good music. And
it doesn't seem like the meme humor is overwhelming in it, though, in the way it is in some games. Like even something like Borderlands, it can get kind of oppressive, whereas in this, it seemed like your knowledge of meme humor is going to alert you to it more or less.
Yeah.
Because some of it just seems like, oh, this is weird.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's very fair. And I wonder if part of that is like the fact that it's all text. So it's not like people voice acting like that sorts of memes.
Yeah.
So in some ways it feels like less in your face. I'm not reading all this text anyways. So just like I can skim over half of it.
The game doesn't have random audio samples of people going to the moon.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's a fun game. I will say the difficulty scales quite a bit in that game. And so it's got a lot of like, I've done many runs and I have not beaten the final boss. And so the way that it's structured is there are levels, but there are different tiers of the same level. So you've got like the tier 1 forest level, the tier 2 forest level, and a tier 3 forest level. And that tier 3 forest level, basically you each run is 10 minutes, or you get 10 minutes before like the final swarm comes to get you. And so you go around doing all of like your looting and stuff like that. And then you summon the boss at like the portal. Tier 1, that's it. Then you're done. On tier 2, you then go to a second landscape. You essentially do the same thing. On tier 3, you go to a third landscape and do the same thing. And that by the time you get to that third tier, it gets pretty tough. And that final boss, it adds a few extra layers of like things that you have to do. It really like weakens you at the beginning of that fight, and you like get progressively stronger, but it's not easy. And so it's definitely, there's a lot of like quests and challenges for you to do as well. So there's a lot of replayability. And so I've put in pretty good amount of hours, I would say, just in the week since I ended up picking it up.
I feel like Vampire Survivors on its surface looks very simplistic, but if you played through that game as they were patching it and adding things into it, like some of the later parts of that game were really difficult.
Yeah.
Like even to figure out what you were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
In order to access a new part of a level or a different level. And so, I think that is a genre that can often be sort of dismissed because it seems like, well, where's the real skill in this?
Sure.
Because it's, it's handling most of the difficulty, it seems like, on the outside looking at it. But yeah, I mean, that I could see that getting very difficult very quick. Even just the little gameplay that I've watched, I could see, players and these are people who play games professionally, getting overwhelmed very quickly.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, similar to Vampire Survivors, there's a lot of strategy that goes into the decisions that you're making in terms of like the items that you are choosing, whether or not. I don't think there's like a synergy system where like you can combine items the way that you can in Vampire Survivors. If there is, I haven't seen it. But like the ways that so you have weapons, and then you have tomes, and tomes increase your stats, whether it be like your chance to get a critical hit, or your attack speed, or your like projectile, the amount of projectiles that you're shooting out, and the ways that those end up synergizing, and like you end up having like a particular build for the character is, like I said, there's like some good decision making, and like that ends up going into that. And so it's a good time. And then the other game that I played that I ended up buying on the Steam sale is one that had seen, I guess people were playing it about a month ago, I think, when it came out, was Is This Seat Taken? Which
I played the demo.
Oh, nice. It's like a little puzzle game where you are having to figure out where these little characters have to get seated, because they all have these requirements.
It's like a logic puzzle.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because if I had to compare it to anything else that I've played, it's probably the new Pips puzzle that is on the New York Times, where you've got the like dominoes that you have to place in a particular space.
Right.
These characters have certain restrictions or things that they won't sit next to, or they don't want to sit next to. And so it's figuring out how to place them. I ended up playing through the whole thing. It was about 6 hours was my amount of time that I played.
So for those listening, it's like Bill does not want to sit next to Susie. Susie wants to sit by a window. Like you have these sorts of rules, and you're having to place them around those rules.
Yes. And there's different levels with like different requirements. So like one of them is like they're at a sports game, and so it's like this person doesn't want to be next to loud noises, so you can't put them next to people who are cheering together. You can't sit like opposing fans, and you can't sit opposing fans next to each other. They can be like kitty corner from each other, but like if they're, and then there's like a sort of AOE effect,
right,
of like how much cheering they're going to do. So it's like you have to sit them almost like a full row away from each other. And so
I remember there was a level where you're in a movie theater, and it was like this person is chomping on popcorn. So and this person doesn't want to sit next to somebody loud. But like it's the seats surrounding them where they can hear the popcorn.
There was one clip that of a streamer who was playing it that makes me laugh. And it was, this person wants to sit in the center of the room. It's the movie theater level. This person wants to sit in the center of the room, and this person wants to look at their phone. It's like, and this guy's response is like, "Oh, you're the worst person of all time."
Golly. I hate that person.
That's where it's like there's just certainly some times where
that would just make me mad doing that level.
Where this person, where like you have all these restrictions on this person. I was like, no, I'm sorry. You don't get to be that picky.
Yeah. So did you enjoy it?
I did. And some of those puzzles get pretty tough. I think it was, like I said, I got it on sale. It was maybe like $8 on sale on the Steam sale that's going on right now. I think not on sale, it's maybe $9. So it's no more than $10. And it's good. I played through all the levels. I think there's 5 stages and like 5 levels in each stage or something like that. So there's maybe like 25. And I want to say, like I said, I ended up just playing through the whole thing, and it was about 6 hours. Now, people who are good at puzzles will probably beat it a lot faster than that. I enjoyed it a good amount. If you like those kinds of logic puzzles, it's a good time, and I think it's definitely worth the whatever it is, $8 or $9 you're going to spend on it.
Yeah, I played the demo, I feel like I played more, but maybe the demo was just very long. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, it's real simple, and it's very much those sort of logic puzzles that maybe you did back in school.
Yeah.
You know, like not quite at the level of, you know, Susie's birthday is before Sam's, and Sam's is after Jack's. It's not. It never gets as that complicated, or I didn't think it did, as some of those. But it is very much of you having. I think the biggest issue is a lot of spatial reasoning.
Yeah.
I think if you maybe struggle with spatial reasoning of like kind of looking at this layout of chairs or seats or whatever it might be, and kind of arranging it in your mind before you start placing people.
Yeah.
That might be challenging with that. But I don't know. What I played at least never got so difficult as to get frustrating.
No, I don't think. I mean, it's one of those things that as I was playing it, I don't know if I ever got super frustrated with it. I think I got frustrated in the sense of like, there is one person that is unhappy. I feel like you just got to take one for the team. you just got to take it.
This is the real world, buddy. Like, you know, you don't get your favorite seat in Chipotle every time. Like sometimes you gotta not setting your regular seat. You're not Norm.
But it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, just let me take everybody out.
Right.
And then it's just sort of starting over again. So I feel like I could see where that could get a little frustrating or annoying at times, but that's kind of just I think that's just how you have to solve those puzzles a lot of the times.
It seems like something that would be a good phone game or an iPad game.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be a little small for a phone, but yeah, I think like an iPad game or something like that. I think, yeah, certainly.
Cool. I'm glad to hear you like the full version of that, because it's a game I think it was the Steam Next Fest when I played the demo.
It makes sense. Like I said, I think the full thing came out about a month ago.
Yeah, and I think I talked about it on here maybe whenever the demo came out, and I really liked it at the time, and I was like, oh, you know, this Case of the Golden Idol has some of that in it. Those sorts of games I enjoy quite a bit, but you know, maybe because I'm nerdy. I remember doing those back in school, those logic puzzles, and I always found them pretty enjoyable until they got super, super difficult.
Sure.
And then you're just like, what is the point here?
Yeah, I didn't. It definitely ramps up in difficulty over time, as you would expect, but I don't think there was anything that had me that frustrated where it feels like some of those logic puzzles you have to do a bit of like a leap. You know, there's not like, it's not maybe not giving you all of the information. And I don't think that's never the case in this one.
Oh, that's good to hear. Is that it?
Yeah, those are the two primary things I've played.
All right. So I've been playing more of Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I love this game. I think it's amazing. It's a game, the more I play of it, the more I really, really like so many of the choices they make in it. You know, we don't get this style of game all that often anymore. Just kind of a very straightforward 2D action game. I feel like we don't get of this style an awful lot. And I like a lot of like I said, a lot of the choices they make. It is, you know, very much level based, but within levels, some of the levels are more exploratory. And so you end up with some levels that feel very sort of Metroidvania, in that you enter into a large area and you're going off, okay, I have to go off over here, and then I do something or I get an ability, and that's going to allow me to access this area over here. And you're kind of crisscrossing back and forth. And sometimes that happens in very interesting ways. So I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll say, like, I was in one level where a natural disaster of some kind happened that changed the level and the way that you were interacting with the level. And so it ends up just being very, very interesting because it's that straightforward action. And I'll say the action is very good. It feels very good. It's very tight. It always feels like you have control. And so when you are making mistakes or you're taking damage, it feels like it's my fault. Like I made the mistake, or, I got a little greedy and tried to get in too many hits when I should have backed off a bit.
Sure.
So it has all of that. And then it has these areas where you're exploring more so that you are getting that sort of balance, right? So it doesn't feel quite like a 16-bit game. It still feels like an expansion of a 16-bit game. If you were making that style of game today, what would that style of game sort of look and play like? And with that, I think, sort of hearkening back to those 16-bit days, one of the things I really like about this game is just the utter goofiness of it. Like, just the storyline is there's this evil guy who is taking control of life and death. And I won't spoil, but that means that you end up having to team up with some weird characters that you wouldn't necessarily think of as being on the good side. But like then at the same time, he's doing all this through a giant multinational corporation. And so you're like battling like these fantastical monsters, but at the same time, you're doing that within like these corporate headquarters as you're going through in these installations. And so there's like this mix of sort of science fiction and fantasy and everything, and like a little bit of sort of political commentary on multinational corporations and how they're behind everything bad, even if there's this sort of evil beyond them and everything. It's the sort of storyline that you got out of games in that era. And as time has gone on, we've gotten more sort of grounded and realistic storytelling. And I kind of like it. There's a goofiness to it that that is just fun.
Yeah.
And I don't know that will appeal the same to somebody who was significantly younger than me, who had no like sort of experience playing those older games. But like for me, I'm like, okay, yes, I am now boarding a underwater base, right? And I'm having to go down through this underwater base, and in the background there's all this machinery and there's mechs in the background being assembled. I'm like, this is all stupid. And it is a little bit anime, but it's even more so an awful lot of G.I. Joe from the 80s.
Sure.
And that's pretty cool, I think, to like get that tone right. One of the criticisms I have of the game is the voice acting. I think the voice acting's bad in it. It's just very sort of flat. The voice actors aren't horrible, but I guess I'm so used to good voice acting in games today.
Yeah.
The fact that this is very flat for the most part kind of stands out. One of the better jokes in the game is the fact that your main character never speaks. Instead, he just grunts. And so they actually like have that in there. They have somebody grunting for his response. So he's your silent protagonist, but they're like, oh, we actually have to have him speak. It would be weird if he never does. So people will have a long monologue to him and he just responds like back at them. But yeah, it's a really fantastic example of how to update that genre. And I would say if you're an action fan, this is really great. It's a whole lot of fun. It reminds me of the Prince of Persia game that came out last year. A lot of mobility, a lot of combat focused. I would say even something, So
it sounds like these are like discrete levels that you're playing through, though. It's not a Metroidvania. Okay.
No, it is not an open world sort of Metroidvania setup. You have you have different like sort of areas that you move into, and there'll be 2 or 3 levels, and you can choose among those what order you want to tackle them in. And you can also go back to levels. And so there's a lot of hidden stuff in each level. There's tons of hidden stuff. And so as you gain abilities later in the game, you can go back to early levels and replay them and access new areas within those levels. So, you can spend an awful lot of time in this game. For a game that seems really simple and straightforward, I'm spending quite a bit of time actually playing it. And, as I unlock new abilities, all right, let's go back and play this level and access the stuff within it that I missed earlier. But yeah, I mean, just fantastic. And it looks fantastic. I talked about that last week, but it has a very distinct sort of painterly art style to it. I think that works really well in its favor. We talk about it on here quite a bit, but games today look so good. Yeah. And it's not just what is hyper realistic. It's games actually have a style. And this is a game that has a very distinct look and style to it. And I am all for that. Do that more. So anyways, that's Shinobi. I'm not quite done with it, but I'm pretty close to the end at this point. I think what is the end of the game. And very, very high recommendation for that. The other thing that I played this week is Blippo. So have you heard of Blippo?
I have not.
Blippo
Plus. There's a plus sign at the end of it.
It is actually Blippo Plus. That's important because Blippo is one of the weirdest things I've encountered in video games ever. Maybe not just this year, but ever. Blippo is in some ways not even a video game. It is more of sort of an art project, is maybe a better way to think of it. But I also don't know how you would categorize it outside of video games because the interactive element is so important to it. So Blippo Plus is, imagine you had access to another planet's cable system, and you could flip through and watch different channels on this cable system. And each one is full motion video of different shows, multiple different shows on every channel. So there are different channels. They'll have multiple different shows. You can bring up a very 90s looking program guide and see what's coming on next and everything and flip through the different channels, or you can just channel surf flipping from one channel to the next. And each one has these different shows on. Those shows are, I would say, inspired by other shows, but they're never quite at the level of, hey, this is a straight up parody. So there's a science show that is very clearly drawing a bit from, say, Bill Nye or Beakman's World, some of those kind of classic shows. But it's never hey, this is clearly supposed to be Bill Nye, and we're straight up mocking or ridiculing him or something. But it's also on this foreign planet, so nothing is quite the way we think it should be. Nobody actually talks in the way that we think they should talk, or, they're referencing things where you're just what is that? And they have made tons of programming, and you are just flipping through the channels, watching this all. And it's the most weird, bizarre, improv experiment, maybe would be the way to think of it. 'Cause a lot of it feels like it's improv. It feels hey, we sat down and there's 3 cast members and we're going to produce the show. This is an alien game show. What would this look like? And we're just going to run with it. It's got this very sort of off-kilter, dry sense of humor. All of the shows look incredibly cheap in a way that sort of feels like cable access programming of the 1980s. A lot of people have said this harkens back to the 90s. And I get that with the program guide. That aspect of it very much feels like the 90s, where, the first time you could pull up a program guide on a set-top box and see this show is on at this time and everything. But the shows themselves feel like something out of the 1980s. They feel like cable access programming. They feel like the skits that you would see on USA Up All Night or Night Flight or MTV, Liquid Television, or something of that nature. They're so weird and off kilter, and I feel like that's going to make it not connect with a lot of people because you have to like sort of connect with the sense of humor of what they're going for with it. And I think a lot of it really works well. And like anything, some of it's going to work better than others. But then, also, like I said, part of the experience is the interactive nature of it. The fact that you are flipping through different channels and you're kind of getting a story pieced together because characters on one program are mentioning something that's happening in their world, and you're kind of like trying to piece those clues together. And like one of the first things when you turn the game on is it's like, hey, I'm going to search for available channels, and it runs through and it's like, no, this is all static. This isn't a channel. Oh, there is a channel on number 8 and channel 13 is coming in, which again, I feel like it's something like kids today would not get that reference. They would not understand that. There is a channel on there called Zest. And it is I think the very last channel on the dial and everything. And Zest is alluded to being the pornography channel, and it comes in distorted like pornography channels that you were not paying for in the 90s and did not have the decoding code or whatever it was in order to watch. So, like if you did not subscribe to Cinemax, you could not watch the Cinemax, the Skinamax on there. And so you are hearing sounds, you are seeing like this distorted, scrambled video that is sort of alluding that this is alien pornography, but like you don't really know. And so for people who don't know, lots of young men grew up in the 80s and 90s before there was access to the internet and the web. If they were not finding nudie magazines out in the woods somewhere, which for some reason seems like a universal experience, which I don't know why that is. Like, why was that a thing people did back then? But if you weren't doing that, the first way that you might have seen a nipple would have been on a program like this, like, Cinemax Scrambled, or the, eventually there was like a Playboy channel and something like that, Scrambled. That is what this is alluding to. I don't think there's actually any nudity on it, but I don't know. I didn't sit and watch that channel long enough to see if it ever became unscrambled enough that I could see something. But just putting something like that in there, is the whole thing is wild. And there's, as far as I can tell, and I haven't watched through everything, is that there's not something that you're really interacting and doing other than you are watching these in different pieces and trying to put together maybe what is going on in this larger story outside of the individual shows themselves. But it's so weird. It's such a like an amazing project, and you end up having a lot of the same people working on one show or another. There's a credit section that you can access, and it'll show like per show who did what on each show and everything. They are putting out a behind the scenes documentary, the Steam page says, so they're going to show you like how they produce this.
That'll be cool.
Yeah, and it's just such a weird project. It feels like something a bunch of college students might have put together.
Yeah.
but it's so weird, and you're watching it, and there's something very captivating about it, because oftentimes a lot of the programming feels like lost media. Like this is something that might have been a real show 40 years ago on television. Like there's a channel that, or at least a show on one of the channels, that's entirely first person of a guy walking through the woods with an axe. And I don't think it's supposed to be necessarily like referencing slashers, but it's also like there is a sort of like something a little sinister about it at the same time, right? Like this guy just walking through the woods with an axe, all from a first person perspective. And you're sort of watching this going, okay, well, this is kind of interesting, and where is this going to go if it goes anywhere at all? So yeah, it's not really a game, but like also, like I don't know where else it would fit, because it's not a film. Like
Sure.
the interactive nature is too important to it to be classified as just a film. So like an art project, sort of a, art installation, like maybe something that you would experience in a museum.
Sure.
But there is something about like being able to set back and relax and just flip through these channels and watch everything that's on there. There's like a channel that's showing a workout program. You have people dressed up in costumes that look sort of like 80s Jane Fonda style aerobics exercise outfits. But, it's just off enough because it's this alien world. It's just really fascinating. Like I'm kind of obsessed with what is the bigger thinking with this.
Sure.
Is there going to be something bigger that gets revealed as you go through it? But even just watching the shows, I would say, it's very much going to be hit or miss for different people, but
it sounds really interesting. It sounds like one of those things where it's like most people would probably benefit from at least experiencing it, right? You might not like it, but like there's something to be said about, at the very least, having an experience with whatever you want to call this media is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could get on YouTube, and probably a lot of this content will end up on YouTube at some point. Somebody will just, stream an entire channel for the entire time and let it play out, and do that for each channel. And I would say that is a way to experience this, and you'll get some of the enjoyment out of it. But the idea of building something that allows you to channel surf, to me, so much changes the experience, right? It makes it a different experience.
Sure, absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's something that everybody should experience. Like even if it's a game that you don't buy, if you know somebody who has bought it, like just go watch 20 minutes of it. You'll get a pretty good idea for what it is with that, and whether it's for you or not. But it just feels like a really fun way of somebody exploring the medium of video games, of interactive entertainment, of how far in a sort of direction can we take this?
Sure.
So yeah, very, very cool. I recommend Blippo. It's not super expensive. I think it's like maybe $12.
I looked, it's on sale right now. It's $15 normally. It's $13.50, 10% off right now.
Okay, 13. So yeah, like not bad.
No.
For $13. That's essentially a movie ticket. I think you'll get 2 hours of enjoyment out of it. Well, you'll get 2 hours of content out of it. Yeah. How much you'll enjoy it, right? Like I said, very much depends person to person. All right, let's move on to the news. I feel like probably the biggest news this week has been Electronic Arts is being acquired for $55 billion. So 3 different entities kind of teaming up to acquire them. They will take Electronic Arts private after this deal goes through. But those are the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. So that is government controlled. The government of Saudi Arabia has puts aside a significant amount of money, billions of dollars, to invest in different industries. And in recent years, they've gone heavy into video games with SNK, which they purchased outright, but they also did investments in lots of other companies.
Yeah, I feel like some amount of time ago, we talked about them investing in Nintendo.
Yeah.
Or buying a stake in Nintendo or something.
Yeah, it's a small stake, but still. Silver Lake, which is an investment firm, and Affinity Partners, which is headed by Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Donald Trump. Jared Kushner, very famously, like after he left office, in which case he was, I forget what his exact title was, but like he was supposed to be negotiating a peace deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And when he left office, so he had a lot of work in the Middle East. When he left office, Saudi Arabia made like a $2 billion investment into his company. So Jared Kushner has very, as far as my understanding, very close ties with Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, as I noted, they're going to take Electronic Arts private when this deal is concluded. This brings up all sorts of questions.
Yeah.
As part of this deal, so what happens with a lot of venture capital, as part of this deal is structured that Electronic Arts will take on a certain amount of debt that is being used to purchase this will end up as debt on Electronic Arts books. My understanding, I think it's about $20 billion of debt will be added to Electronic Arts. That obviously raises concerns anytime there's an acquisition or merger, but especially when it's structured this way, that will mean significant layoffs within the company. And probably not just, hey, we're going to fire 20 people here or 30 people there, but probably we are going to shut down
like entire divisions. Yeah.
Entire developers and divisions, which has a lot of people looking around, like, what does Electronic Arts own? And so, you look at something like BioWare.
Yeah, BioWare is the one that I've heard get brought up a couple of times.
Particularly since BioWare has been, under delivering, let's say, in recent years. The last
Dragon Age.
Yeah, Dragon Age. That came out end of last year, I feel like. October,
something
maybe,
like that,
last year. That game underperformed.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering
Anthem before that.
I was going to say Inquisition was the game of the year, however many years ago. I think it was Inquisition.
Yeah, I think that's the last one before this.
And I think same thing with the last couple of Mass Effects, or at least Andromeda. I don't know how well regarded the Legendary collection that put together the first three.
I think people really liked the Legendary collection, but that was just a compilation of the original trilogy. But yeah, I mean, you look at stuff like Mass Effect, you look at Dragon Age, you look at all of this. BioWare is not necessarily on the best footing. You go, where do you cut costs? And that seems like an area you cut costs in.
Yeah, I mean, we had talked about this last year after, I didn't even know what the subtitle of the Dragon Age game is. But after that came out, I feel like we had talked about this.
Velgard?
That sounds right. We had talked about, if they don't deliver, they continue to not deliver. Is this a company that we see get sold off or, shuttered? And now with this acquisition, that feels potentially even more likely.
Which feels crazy because it feels like at least the Mass Effect IP is worth something.
Sure.
I know there's been some damage with Andromeda and just with delays of doing anything with it, but you think of licensing that into a TV series or a movie or into, even repackaging those games. Let's go remake those games, right? Instead of just repackaging them, let's go remake Mass Effect 1 and 2. That seems like money sitting there to be made. So, we don't know that they would shut them down, but like you start looking at, well, where do you cut cost if you're Electronic Arts? That's an area you could cut costs. Obviously, Criterion with the Need for Speed games. Now they've been working on the new Battlefield. They've been contributing to that. But you start looking at, well, do we ever get another Need for Speed? Obviously, the big money makers for them are going to be the sports franchises, Madden and FC, the FIFA follow-up. But those games have, my understanding, have been sort of underperforming. Particularly FC has been the past 2 years, not quite doing the sales numbers that they were expecting with it. College football, obviously a big success for them.
Massive success.
And they have said that they're going to start working on a college basketball game. But like, you start to wonder, okay, well, yes, and we know there's a bigger issue to talk about all this, but like we are talking about it from a purely business standpoint right now. What does Electronic Arts look like in 5 years? Is it only those sports franchises?
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I'm trying to think of what else they have. I think those are at least the biggest ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
I mean, they own a lot of intellectual property over the years of companies that they have bought out and everything. They own Origin, I believe, still. So, I mean, that was the name of their online service on PC for a while. But like they own Wing Commander. They own Ultima.
Does EA publish the no, maybe it's, I don't know, the Star Wars games, the like Jedi Survivor, or those a different company?
I don't even know anymore.
Okay.
I don't think the Jedi Survivor games are them. I feel like that is maybe it is though.
Because I'm trying to think like I'm trying to go through my head of like what's on like the EA Play.
Now, they did
platform.
have a deal with Star Wars, right?
Okay.
So that's where we got the dogfighting game that had a VR mode.
Oh, the Outlaws?
No, not Outlaws.
Oh.
Now, that's Ubisoft.
Okay.
For Outlaws.
Jedi Survivor is published by EA.
Okay. What was that? Was it called Starfighter or something? I don't know. Anyways, the one that came out a couple years ago, and they made a VR mode for it. That's actually pretty neat. So yeah, they had at one point they had an exclusive deal with Star Wars, and then of course they had all the problems with the Battlefront games. And so that deal, Star Wars is continuing to work with them, but they also are selling the license to other people. So yeah, I mean, when you think about, okay, well, what does EA actually own? Right? They don't own Star Wars.
Sure.
That's a deal that they have. They own obviously the BioWare stuff. They own all that intellectual property. They own the Madden name and the FC name, but obviously we've already run into the problem there with FIFA in that was the brand name and they had to change it because FIFA wanted too much money going forward.
And maybe that's what I'm thinking of is they might not own a lot of these, but they publish a lot of these. Because the other one that I was just looking up is they publish most of, if not all of the Hazelight games. So It Takes Two and Split Fiction and those games as well.
Yeah, I think that came out of an initiative originally where they were trying to get into publishing some smaller games. So the Unravel games were also them.
Yeah.
And obviously they had a lot of success with the Hazelight games over the years. Yeah, I mean, they still own a lot of IP. They, well, what am I trying to think of now? Will you talk? Let me look it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that if, the way that this is structured is they're going to take on all this debt. I think those cost cutting maneuvers, however you want to phrase that, are certainly going to happen. But I think
And you also have
go
to
ahead.
think with those cost cutting measures, that also means like even nickel and diming you more within the games that they are selling. So like Madden Ultimate Team and the FIFA Ultimate Team, like those sorts of things, they're going to try to figure out how to milk even more money out of those.
Well, and I know that was one of the things that I saw people talking about was, oh, is this going to be like the end of all of the like infinite microtransactions that were in those games? And the answer is probably not.
No, I think they'll get worse.
Yeah.
Mirror's Edge is what I was trying
Oh,
to think
okay.
of. I don't know why I couldn't think of that, but yeah, I don't know. You know, Electronic Arts, for people who don't know, is, you know, a company that's been around since the early 1980s. Like Electronic Arts was one of the first companies to really put their developers front and center, to put their name on games. So, you know, you go back and you look at stuff like The Bard's Tale and, you know, they're putting the developer's name front and center. They were selling games in sort of LP style packaging. And it looked like a record, and you would open it up and there was all sorts of information, you know, printed on the inside of it and everything. And they were sort of setting up their developers at that time when a development team could be, you know, 5 people or 10 people, as to be like sort of rock stars, right? So, I mean, they own Maxis. So they own the, you know, they own the Sim City games and the Sims. And so that's something we forgot about. But obviously you can imagine how you
hugely
make
popular. Yeah.
money, you know, with the Sims and stuff like that. But, you know, they have this very long history and track record. Not all of it great. You know, certainly they have been named the worst company in America, I think a few times over the years. And that's mostly to people getting very frustrated with some of their policies with their games. So, yeah, from a purely business standpoint, I would say we're probably going to get fewer games. That seems to be the norm. Obviously, with Activision, with their acquisition by Microsoft, the hope was that they would do more interesting stuff, and it feels like they're doing less. Right? It feels like we're getting more Call of Duty instead of...
What are the things that are definitely going to make us money because we just spent billions of dollars to buy you? Great, you're going to make those games.
Right. I mean, we got Tony Hawk 3 and 4 out of the deal, which is great. But like, how many more of those are we going to get?
Sure.
You know, not Tony Hawk specifically, but games of that style, that nature, right? Are we going to get revivals of? Are they going to do another Pitfall? That was kind of the hope. Like, Microsoft needs IP, like make a new Pitfall, and that looks less and less likely now. And so I would say, do we get a new Ultima? I don't know. Like with this, like, you know, like what does that even look like? Is that something that can make enough money to make it worthwhile for them?
Yeah. Are they willing to take that gamble?
Right.
At least early on, you know, maybe years and years and years down the line, if this is still, you know, everything is still kind of the same, maybe then if everything has been successful, but it's like, until there's like a break even point, no, we're making the things that we are, you know, with a bullet are sure going to make us money.
One of the things too to consider is normally companies, like all entertainment companies, not just video game companies, are really hesitant to sell off intellectual property. So even if they aren't doing something with it, the last thing they want to do is sell it off to somebody else. Because if they then make something successful with it, you know, everybody points the finger at them.
Yeah.
Like, you idiots, why did you possibly do that? So, you know, for example, I was just talking to a class today about K-pop Demon Hunters. That was a movie that Sony had put into production, and during production sold it off to Netflix. And then it becomes like the most successful film of the year.
Yeah.
And now Netflix has the right to like do sequels and everything to it. And, you know, Sony can make the film, but like Netflix is going to get all the merchandising and everything else from it. So nobody really wants to do that. But if you are a company who is trying to cut debt, and how can we make a whole lot of money in a short period of time, do you start looking back through that back catalog? Do you see something like Syndicate or Populous or any of these games that they haven't done anything with in a decade or more? And do you take those and say, hey, does somebody want to buy this off of us?
Yeah. In particular, in compared to like the BioWare ones, where those titles still hold some cachet, and it's like, well, we're not willing to sell those off quite yet, right? You know,
and those are transmedia properties more.
Monopoly pieces where it's like, you can take all these little cheap ones, but like, you know, we're holding on to the big money makers until we're really desperate.
Yeah. And so I do wonder about that. Or, you know, at least do they implement a plan of, hey, small indie developers, do you want to come make something with this and we will split the revenue share somehow with you? So that's the business side.
Yeah.
There's also the political, ethical, moral side of this, which is that Saudi Arabia is, we should say, the government of Saudi Arabia, not necessarily the individual people of Saudi Arabia, but the government of Saudi Arabia, you know, had ties to 9/11. They had ties to the murder of journalists and dissidents, murder of an American journalist with Khashoggi. And you start thinking, what does that mean to be in bed with this government as owning the studio, right? This is a government that is very oppressive towards women, a government that is, basically like views being queer as grounds for execution. And so when you start looking at it from that perspective, there are women who work at Electronic Arts. There are certainly queer people who work at Electronic Arts, as there's any company of any size. What is it like for them to be working for the Saudi Arabian government, essentially?
Yeah, I know, you mentioned earlier about sort of their investment in video games, and it's really just an investment in like pop culture in general.
Right.
We've talked a number of times about, wrestling. The WWE hosts multiple shows there a year, multiple like of their pay-per-view premium live events there every year. I know there's been a lot of talk of they're having some big like comedy festival and like the comedians who have signed on.
This is
for that.
This has been hugely controversial. I think it's the Riyadh comic festival. They approached many stand-up comics, offered them huge paydays, is my understanding, like significantly more than these people are making, on a normal basis. So they got people like Bill Burr, for example, and a lot of comedians looked at the situation and said, they turned down the money. They said, "We're not going.
Yeah,
we're not taking your money. We kind of feel like your money is blood money to some degree." And, like this is a government that is oppressive of free speech. Now, in the United States, we maybe can't talk that much about free speech at the moment. We maybe can't talk about it, period. But, you do have to kind of look at the situation and say, are you taking money from a government that stops anybody else from speaking out? And, you are, a lot of these stand-up comics have taken a moral stance in other situations of, hey, we don't want to be restricted about what we're allowed to say. We don't, we don't want to be woke. We don't want to be cancel culture. And then, but you are taking money from a government that explicitly does that.
Yeah. And so the point I was making just in like this investment in pop culture, just sort of this like washing away of all of the negative public image that the country and particularly that the government has.
Right.
And this just feels like very clearly another one of those efforts.
Yeah, we should note that like a lot of this is about diversifying where their money comes from, right? Like traditionally, Saudi Arabia has gotten a lot of their money from oil, and they are looking down the road at a time when maybe the rest of the world is less dependent on their oil, right? And if that reality exists, okay, well, should we take some of this money that we're making right now and diversify our income streams? So whether pop culture is one of those areas, right, that you can start investing into movie studios and video games and, professional sports and all of that. Yeah. So, I mean, we can talk about our individual, like sort of, outlooks on this, but like, I do think it's worth pointing out that there are real human beings working at Electronic Arts who have to now are confronted with this issue of, do we walk away from this company? Right? Like, can I continue to work for a company that is owned and operated and funded by a government that I fundamentally disagree with? And that's got to be a horrible position.
Yeah, especially, we've talked, I mean, not every week, but many weeks about the precarity of like being in the game industry.
Yeah.
And to then have to like have what felt like hopefully a stable position and now feel like, do I leave and have to enter into that precarious world of like finding a job again?
Right.
Particularly
in this economy.
Yeah. That's a hard decision to make.
And then I think there's the personal side for every individual person where they'll have to decide, can I buy games?
Sure.
Right? Like we've talked about on this podcast, something like Hogwarts Legacy, right? Like you are buying that game and a significant portion of the money from that game is going directly to J.K. Rowling. How do you feel about that? Like, can you look past that? Is that a deal breaker for you? And I think a lot of players are going to be faced with that issue of, can I continue buying a Madden football? I think for the NFL, that then raises an issue of
that exclusivity deal. Yeah.
Do they want to keep an exclusivity deal with a company that a significant portion of people might be boycotting? And I don't know. Like, I don't know how significant, how much are people's morals where they will, when it comes football season, they're willing to skip buying Madden football that year or forever going forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that is. I mean, from my personal view is this makes it really difficult to buy an Electronic Arts game going forward. Yeah, so kind of heavy topic to start off with there, but it's certainly the biggest news of the week.
Yeah.
Let's see. Halo Studios has announced that on October 24th, they will hold a panel at the Halo World Championships where they will take a, quote, deep dive on the future of the franchise. So last year at the World Championships, they announced that they were switching to the Unreal Engine for developing Halo games. I would assume we will get something concrete about the next Halo game out of this.
I would think so. It's been 3 years since Infinite came out, it feels like.
I feel like it's been longer. It was like the second year of the Xbox's release.
So maybe 2021 then? 4 years?
Maybe 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like, certainly not. It's coming out next week or something like that.
Sure.
But,
they're not going to shadow drop it.
We've got that would be a bold move.
I mean, that would get attention. Now, they could shadow drop a remake or something.
Sure.
But not a whole new game.
But yeah, it feels like a teaser trailer or something like that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, this also feels like an event where maybe you make some announcements. There's been a rumor of the Master Chief Collection coming to Switch 2. So this might be the sort of event where you would get that kind of news.
Sure.
I mean, I feel like that's been rumored forever. So like maybe that just never happens. Maybe it's one of those kind of rumors.
Maybe it does. It feels like if that were going to happen, it would happen now, in the sense of like the Switch 2 is still early on. Hey, let's get our product on there. This is something we're going to get potentially like a brand new area of the fan base. When Halo could probably use that more than ever, really like invigorating a fan base before you drop news of something new potentially.
Yeah, I think that's a very logical approach to it, right? Like if you're going to announce a new Halo game that I would imagine is 2027. I don't think we'd get it before then.
Would make sense. At the earliest, I would guess 2027.
Then maybe you want the Master Chief Collection on Switch 2 by 2026, so that you are, prepping that new audience for that eventual release. Because I would imagine that new Halo will be everywhere when it comes out. Yeah. Let's see. Polish site ppe.pl claims that Sony will release a revised DualSense controller in November with a removable battery, which I feel like is the number one complaint and request people have for Sony controllers, is that they can have a removable battery. This has never been an issue for me personally, but I know it is for some people. That will come alongside a revised PlayStation 5 Pro, which uses slightly less power. I think the figure they gave was 30% less power. So the controller makes perfect sense. Like that's not that shocking. They put out new revised versions of controllers all the time. I think the idea that they are revising the PlayStation 5 Pro,
it's pretty early.
Right? Yeah. Like, I mean, when we say they're revising it, this is like when you make a slim model of something, right? Like they change the internals so that's cheaper for them to produce and everything. But I don't get the impression the PlayStation 5 Pro is a gangbuster seller. So the idea that they're revising it at all, even bothering with that, is kind of surprising.
Yeah, it's one. And I mean, I know that this would like never happen. If you were revising it so that you could lower the price, maybe, but I don't see that being the case, considering they just raised the prices of consoles earlier this month or last month.
Well, in Europe, they've just put out a revised PlayStation 5 that actually takes the 1 terabyte hard drive and brings it down to, I think, 825 gigabyte. And that the argument seems to be that they are doing that so they don't have to raise prices again. Right. So they're making the models slightly cheaper so that they can keep a model out there without having to again bump prices on the PlayStation 5, which they've already done, which obviously we talked about last week. Xbox has done for the second time this year on their hardware. So maybe you're right. Maybe this is a way to not necessarily cut prices, but to keep prices consistent.
Make sure they don't have to raise them again.
Yeah. But weird, just so weird to be hearing about new revised, cheaper models of consoles. And we're not cutting prices. We may even raise them.
And I guess we'll have to see how legit this is. I don't know if this website has how much credibility or...
They have a bit of a track record with some previous news breaking. But still, these are rumors.
Sure.
Until it's confirmed. Nightdive Studios. I mostly include this because I just think it's really kind of funny. Nightdive Studios is remastering Blood for a second time. They have already remastered Blood once. They're remastering it now again. It will be called Blood Refresh Supply. I think the first remastering was called Fresh Supply, so this is Refreshed Supply.
Makes sense.
This is releasing December 4th. It will add support for 4K resolution, 120 frames per second. It is coming to PC, where the last remastering was. But this seems like this remastering is particularly so that they can bring it to consoles. Blood, if you are not familiar with it, is a first-person shooter from the 90s that is more horror-themed. So, I mean, I guess Doom is a little bit horror-themed to begin with, but this kind of leans even more into it. And cool, I guess. It's just weird that we're into an era where we're remastering remasters. The idea that these same developers are remastering it for a second time.
It'll be remasters all the way down soon enough.
I don't know. Kind of blows your mind. Xbox news. The ROG Xbox Ally had its price announced last week. The basic model, the ROG Xbox Ally, will sell for $600, but the ROG Xbox Ally X will sell for $1,000. I believe it's $999.99. That penny, somebody will be mad that I rounded up a penny, but anyways, $1,000.
I think I just said, holy moly, those prices in our group chat. When I saw them, I think I like immediately went to, wait, how much does the Steam Deck cost? Because I was like, I don't think it's that expensive.
I think you can get a Steam Deck with the LED screen, not the OLED screen. I think you can get that for as cheap as like $350.
I think they're on sale right now for about $320.
Okay, $320.
Because I know they're on also part of that Steam Autumn sale
and
right now.
Those may be refurbished models.
I don't know, possibly.
But still,
you can get the cheapest model for nearly half the cost of whatever this. I don't know what all is going to be on this, but that is a hell of a price.
We should say they're
both of them.
These are more powerful than a Steam Deck.
Sure.
So you are going to get more power. They run off of Windows, so you can run, if you have the Xbox Game Pass, you can run those games on this very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Though we'll talk about why you may not have Xbox Game Pass for long here in a second. I mean, I don't know. Like, cool. Like, I don't have to buy this, right? So it doesn't really bother me. But at the same time, I'm looking at it going, why would I buy this model over multiple cheaper models?
Yeah.
I also just think like the Steam Deck, for all of its problems, and I think the Steam Deck is still not something I would recommend to everyone. I think you have to be a little tech savvy to still work with that in some ways. It's not as simple and straightforward as a Switch.
Sure.
But, like, it is difficult to see recommending this over a Steam Deck. As simple, as straightforward as that works, you start getting into Windows. Obviously, part of the Xbox branding is them trying to streamline and simplify that so that you can run, obviously, your Xbox games through Windows, but you can also, run Steam Deck and Epic Game Launcher and all of that through this as well. I don't know. Is that worth double the cost?
Well, I think that's the thing is this is another instance, as we've talked about so many times. I think just last week we talked about it with raised console prices. This is only for the most hardcore of fans.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
This is, unless you've just got money to blow. Like I don't, this isn't like on a whim type of purchase,
Right.
Where like, I feel like there was a point in time, at least with the Switch 1, it's been that like the handheld model of the Switch 1.
The Lite.
That's something where it's like at $200, maybe you made a little extra that month or this or that. You could be like, like that could be I might buy that on a whim. I'm really, feeling it.
During COVID, they sold an awful lot of those of people just like, hey, I'm stuck at home and I need something to entertain myself.
Yeah. I I don't know. Yeah, outside of the most hardcore of fans, I don't know who buys this.
Well, and we'll talk about this more in a second, but it sort of contributes to, Xbox raising console prices, twice this year, or was it 3 times this year? At least twice. But, like they are more and more pricing the average consumer out, and they are becoming enthusiasts only. Right. And I feel like this kind of continues that messaging of, hey, Xbox is not probably for you. Yeah. I mean, for all we can say negative about PlayStation and their pricing, right? Like they seem downright a bargain in comparison in some ways. And, Nintendo even more so, despite all their issues.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Nintendo will never lower their prices, but you're never going to pay as much as you're paying for anything from one of these other companies.
I mean, that seems like a smart strategy. It's been working for them, so I can't badmouth them over it. Well, let's continue with Xbox because these next 2 stories I feel like kind of go with this. So we talked about them raising prices last week. This feels very much in response to that, or maybe that was just the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Costco is pulling Xbox hardware from store and digital sales, so they're not going to sell it through their website or in Costco warehouse stores.
I imagine that's just, it's too expensive to stock. I don't know, like...
Well, I mean, I imagine it's both a combination of that and that they're just not selling the hardware.
Yeah, okay.
Like it's just not performing for them, right? Which you just start looking at it and you go, man, these feel like all the bellwethers of a collapse for Xbox in the console space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how different retailers, I'm sure like some of them matter a ton. Costco feels like one of those retailers that if you're no longer in Costco, that's going to hurt your business quite a bit.
It's a major retailer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the biggest, but like, there's quite a few families that have Costco memberships. And before anybody like is upset, and like I own an Xbox. I like my Xbox, but like I am looking at this and I am very much reminded of when you start to see Dreamcast not being sold at particular chains, right? When you start to see other consoles get pulled from sales even before the console was officially dead. And that feels like that very much feels like what we're seeing here. Even even Xbox has this history. The Xbox One, when people stopped selling the original Xbox One, the OG Xbox, not the Xbox One. God, that was a stupid naming scheme. But like this feels very reminiscent of that. And it's not a good sign for Xbox when, we're talking about with the ROG Allies, like, hey, you are pricing this where people can't afford it. Or it's only for the enthusiast. It's not for the casual gamer anymore, which is, the Xbox always was. It was like the dorm room game system.
Which like is fine. You can be that company, but you're a niche company. Like you're no longer one of the major players in an industry if you're enthusiasts only.
Yeah, I mean, that was the criticism of Nintendo in certain console generations, right? Like the Wii U put out some really cool games, but it was an entirely niche system, right? And can that survive? Well, maybe it can if you're porting your games and selling them everywhere.
Yeah.
But it feels more and more like, hey, is Xbox hardware even going to be a going concern 2 or 3 years from now?
Well, I feel like we've mentioned it a number of times. Is this the last console that Xbox makes?
I mean, they claim they are working on a new system that will be the most powerful hardware ever. But if you're telling me it's the most powerful hardware ever, There's a PlayStation 5 Pro right now selling for what, $750?
Yeah. Your ROG Ally is going to be selling for $1,000. Is it more powerful than that? I mean,
well, assuming it's not handheld,
Yeah.
it might be slightly cheaper, but you're still pushing $800-900.
yeah.
And I think you mentioned last week when we were talking about this, at that point, why aren't you buying a gaming PC?
Yeah. I mean, it's Microsoft. You can get all the same things unless you want the Xbox 360 Game Pass games.
Right.
That's about it. All you're getting different.
Plus, you're getting PlayStation games that they port over.
Yeah.
Right? You're getting to play the Spider-Man games.
Yep.
Yeah, so we are not intentionally picking on the Xbox, but like, man, it feels like it's been a bad week for Xbox.
And it doesn't stop.
Yeah. So the next story, Xbox is raising prices on Game Pass. They just announced this today. Their compensation for this is, hey, we're adding more games. So there's going to be more games in the back catalog that you can play, but it's going to cost you more. So the core level is getting renamed to Essential, which I hate the naming. Like PlayStation Network subscriptions, like I hate all of these. Like they should all go to Bronze, Silver, and Gold.
Sure.
Like something that people understand, like Essential, Premium, and Ultimate. I have no idea. If you threw those into a hat and I had to pull them out and put them in order, I'm not sure I could.
Yeah, I think I might be able to say that Essential would be your cheapest ones, but yeah, I certainly get what you're saying.
But anyways, that is now going to be $10 a month. The Premium is going to be $15 a month, and Ultimate is now going to be $30 a month.
Yeah, it had been $20. It is now going to be $30. I don't know if Essential and Premium are raising. I think Essential has been and still will be $10. I think the same thing for the Premium at $15.
Yeah, so I do have their little chart, which all these companies now have to put out charts to explain to you these services, which is, to me, always a bad sign. Like, if I cannot understand this without a detailed chart, I think you've already failed. But anyways, Essential is going to have 50-plus games. It will be playable on PC, console, and cloud. So I believe cloud service is new for Essential, or unlimited cloud service. So if you want to stream the games, this is the base for that. Of course, that includes online multiplayer because they've gotten rid of Xbox Gold. There is going to be a rewards program, which I guess maybe already existed, but I certainly did not understand. This says you can now play and earn up to $25 a year in the store with rewards. So I guess by buying games and DLC, you can earn some money back on that. Premium will be a catalog of 200 plus games. You will get new Xbox published games within a year of launch. So at the $15 level, you will not get Forza Horizon 6 at launch, but you will get it within a year of that launch. I think the exception to that is Call of Duty. I think you will get Call of Duty at launch. You can earn up to $50 a year using that Premium. And then Ultimate is going to be a catalog of 400 plus games. You will get 75 plus day one games a year, including all Xbox published games day one. So, obviously you will get the Forza Horizon 6, but like this year they had Silk Song on there as a day one release and everything. You will also get the Ubisoft Plus Classics and EA Play included, with Fortnite Crew coming in November. I have no idea what Fortnite Crew is, some sort of subscription service with Fortnite. And, you can earn up to $100 through their rewards program with that. But that is now $10 more. It's a 50% price increase on the 20 it was previously.
So people are saying it's the return of the Xbox 360. It's going to be $360 a year.
Yeah. I mean, And, when this news broke, I think you actually texted it to me this morning when it happened.
Yeah, I saw it like as soon I had taught and I went back home, and then I saw it when I got home, and I was like, oh, that's seems significant.
Yeah. And, I was factoring up that $360 in my head. I have Ultimate right now, but I did one of those deals where I subscribed for like 3 years.
Okay.
2 or 3 years ago. So I think it's coming up to the point where I'm going to have to re-up. Anyways, when I start looking at $360 a year, do I get $360 of value out of this service each year? And you and I had kind of talked before we went on there about what have we played on there this year. And, I played Doom. I played Clair Obscura. I played Blueprints. I will probably play Silk Song before the end of the year. There's probably a couple other things I've dabbled in, but that's not $360 of value. That's like about, $150, $160 worth of value.
Of those 4 games? Yeah, probably about, probably about 160 would be my guess.
And, that's a good deal at, when you're at $20 a month, it's $240, right? Can I get up to $240 of content value in a year? And even if I'm not quite hitting it, can I get close enough where I just like the convenience of having this catalog available? But 360 is a significant, raise on that.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll get anywhere near 360 if I only played Xbox games, maybe. But, there's always things that aren't on there that I want to play. I want to play, Metroid. That will not be on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I immediately downgraded. I was like, all right. I went in, I found my subscription, and I changed it to the Essential. So that's why I was joking with you beforehand. Shouts out to Xbox for saving me $120 a month, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, this feels like a really weird decision.
Well, yeah, and the other reason that it felt like a really weird decision, or at least the timing of it, was literally yesterday. The president of Xbox
Phil
said,
Spencer.
Somebody else.
Oh, is it Bond? What's her name?
That sounds right.
Bond is her last name.
Yeah. Said yesterday that Game Pass is profitable for us.
Yeah.
Because there was some skepticism, I guess, from the Sony president about these subscription services and sort of the long-lasting, whether or not they were profitable. And she said that Game Pass is profitable for us. So spend more money on it for us, please, I guess.
Yeah, and so what is the point of this, right? Like, the easy answer is, well, this increases revenue.
Yeah.
For them. Even if it's profitable, this is going to make it even more profitable. But how many consumers do you lose in this process? And I will not keep up at the Ultimate level.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I'm balancing it out with one person that stays on, I guess I am balancing it out by now spending $10 less than I was. Right? Because if we were both spending $20,
right.
One person that's now spending $30 and I'm spending $10, you're still making $40 off of us. So I don't know, how many people end up downgrading to the $10 or $15 option, or just I'm done, period. Because if that, if your Essentials getting you 50 games, if I look at that list and that 50 games is I'm not going to play any of these, why would I even continue to spend the $10? Especially if I'm not getting the other day one games, or I'm not getting within a year, whatever the Xbox published games are. I could see myself just canceling it entirely.
Well, I think in a year where big, hyped titles that people were excited for, Perfect Dark, have been canceled, right? What am I even looking forward to next year from Xbox?
Well, that's where I think part of this is that's so... I mean, again, from a business standpoint, I understand why you would make the most expensive one have the best features,
Sure,
right? In terms of the day one. But it does feel like, why, like, and I don't know. I'm just like, so I'm going to get this sometime within a year. I don't really care about that. Like, it's like some of the differences between these tiers also just don't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, playing Forza Horizon a year later, do you care? Well, like, Forza Horizon 5 got ported to PlayStation 5 this year, and it's their best-selling game of the year on PlayStation so far. I assume Call of Duty will beat it eventually. But you look at something like that, and you go, a year from now, like, are people going to care? Well, I can finally play Forza Horizon.
There's other stuff that's coming out at that point in time.
Yeah. And, like, I can see the value of this. Maybe the premium, the middle tier, right? I could see maybe you have a kid and you're like, hey, I'm going to just subscribe you to this, and these are the games, and I don't want to hear you begging for any other games. Mm-hmm. And this will get you Call of Duty, and it'll get you some other games, and you can just play this, and I will put down the, $180 a year, and that way I just don't have to listen to you beg and whine about getting games.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see it from that perspective, but like, I just wonder, yeah, I think you're right. For anyone else, right? It is sort of saying, hey, you're either hardcore or you're going to be in that essential tier. Mm-hmm. And that middle tier doesn't even seem of great value.
Which I imagine is probably the case with the PlayStation model as well. I've got whatever the most basic one for the PlayStation Plus is. I imagine probably most people have whatever the most basic of the PlayStation Plus. And maybe some people, the most hardcore of fans, as we've talked about, certain things are just going to be, we are catering to the most hardcore of fans. Yeah. And if you are a casual fan, well, you're not giving us all that much money anyways, so we're not going to worry about you as much.
Yeah, but I mean, as we were just talking about with the hardware, like, how much of that hardcore fan base is there? I don't know. If you're catering to that audience in everything that you're doing, in the price of your hardware, in the price of your subscription service, and even the pricing of the games. Remember, Xbox earlier this year was teasing, we're moving to $80 for our games, and everybody was like, the hell, like. And they quickly backed off of that. But when you start thinking about it, you go, well, who even is their market anymore? And is that market significant enough to continue their investment into video games?
Which, like, I would almost understand this move to $30 if they stood strong on that $80 for games. Because it's like, at this point, if you play 4 games a year on day one, I guess it would be like 4.5 games. 4.5 games a year, you're making up that money rather than having to buy it. So, like, at that point, I almost understand it. But it also comes back to, I don't know if I play that many Xbox games.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm primarily playing the indie stuff that gets put on there, and those games aren't as expensive to begin with.
Nintendo has something coming out just about every month, first party. Mm-hmm. Like, they got very good during the Switch generation. About just about every month, there was something first party coming out. And it seems like with Switch 2, at least the latter half of this year, they're nailing that again.
Yeah.
Right? And Nintendo seems able to do that. PlayStation and Xbox have not been able to do that this console generation. Mm-hmm. You're lucky. We'll talk about PlayStation's like schedule for next year, but you're lucky you're getting 2 or 3 games a year. Mm-hmm. Well, at 2 or 3 games a year, like, you're not making that value to me. And, in fairness, I feel like Xbox has been doing more than PlayStation. They bought up a bunch of studios. You'll get Call of Duty, but like, man, it is not the value that you think should be there. So yeah, that's a good point about $80. If the games were $80, man, maybe that was the original plan. Maybe when they announced $80, the plan was to raise this price and to use that as leverage. But you know, like I also feel like Doom was a really cool game. I really enjoyed it. Would you have gotten $80 out of me for Doom? Probably not.
Yeah.
That doesn't, I mean, that's a good game, but $80 for it would have been difficult to swallow. So, and $360 for it, also very difficult. All right. So sorry, Xbox, really bad week. Hopefully things turn around here soon. Doug Bowser, the president of Nintendo of America, has announced that he is stepping down effective December 31st. He is being replaced by Devin Pritchard.
They didn't have somebody named like Kamek or, Waluigi in the company that they could have.
Is anybody really named Waluigi?
I don't know. Maybe.
That would be really interesting if somebody had the name Waluigi. I feel like Wario is more possible than Waluigi.
Maybe.
Waluigi always felt like a really bad name. It's like part of why that character is so unlikable. So Devin Pritchard is a woman, which is only kind of interesting from the perspective of Nintendo in recent years has been trying to diversify their executive level staff in Japan, which has traditionally been entirely male dominated. And they have been trying to get more women. We've talked about in doing that is the outcome of that we're starting to see some of the spoils of games more focused on female characters. Something like, them doing an entire game on Princess Peach, right? Of realizing that, hey, there's maybe a market for the less hardcore player that we can kind of target with this who, will enjoy that there's a dress up factor in this game.
Just another demographic that we can potentially market our games to.
And Devin Pritchard comes from sort of the marketing side. It's my understanding that a lot of the work that she's been doing in recent years has been with deals with outside developers and everything in order to bring some of their games onto the platform. So you start seeing like, okay, well, maybe she's really good at working with the indie scene, which has been part of what made the original Switch such a success.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at Switch 2 with Hades 2 launching on there, with Silk Song coming on there, it seems like Nintendo is very keenly aware we need to get the triple I independent games on here.
Sure. Well, I even think about if they're getting some of the Xbox games, or if, maybe one day PlayStation games start coming to Nintendo.
They got that Lego Horizon game.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
If those games start coming as well, you've got somebody in literally top leadership who's already familiar with those conversations. And so that decision makes sense to put her in charge.
We should note that Nintendo of America is not making decisions on what game Nintendo makes next. So Nintendo of America is not saying, hey, why don't we make a Star Tropics? Nintendo of Japan does not care what they think. But
Justin, I hate to break it to you. If they had chosen you to be the new president of Nintendo of America and you're like, I'm feeling Star Tropics, Nintendo of Japan would still have been no.
Oh, no, I understand that. But the difference is I would have gone out fighting for that game. I would have been like, hey, if I lose this job, but I get a new Star Tropics, completely worth it. I will be forever a hero for nerds online, which, I mean, what more horrible of a fate can I really hope for? But yeah, I think, so one of the things to understand is that Nintendo of America is primarily marketing focused and legal focused. Nintendo sues a lot of people, and a lot of that is sort of based out of Nintendo of America. But Nintendo of Japan needs an arm to build these sort of relationships. A lot of indie developers are based out of the US. A lot of, Xbox developers, Xbox as a company, Microsoft obviously is located a few miles from Nintendo of America's headquarters. So it makes a whole lot of sense from that perspective, right? Of you want somebody who's good at these sort of outreach and relations with outside developers in charge. And I do think it's important that they chose a woman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to overly play that, but like Nintendo has had some problems with the treatment of female developers. Obviously, that is a much bigger issue widely in the game industry. So I feel like the more you have women in these top roles, obviously here now in Nintendo of America, you were just mentioning with Sarah Bond. Is that right? Sarah Bond?
Yes, that sounds right.
In charge at Xbox, or I guess second behind Phil Spencer, but a lot of people have assumed that if she is still there when he leaves, that she might move into his position. I think that affects the game industry, and one assumes only in a positive way.
Yeah.
Last thing here, Sony had their state of play, and so there were some announcements and everything as part of that. We're going to run through this quickly because I feel like this is now a week old, because it was going on during, I think, while we were recording the last episode, or right after we had recorded the last episode. I think the biggest news out of that was they showed the first gameplay from Marvel's Wolverine. This is from Insomniac, the developers of the Spider-Man games. That game is coming out in fall of 2026. I think the biggest surprise out of that footage was how graphic it's going to be.
Like an edgelord game. Like you said, multiple people getting stabbed in the face in the first 30 seconds of the trailer. I was like, I don't think this game is for me.
Yeah, quite a bit of blood, him stabbing his claws up through people's, jaws or something. Obviously, I think that's accurate for some of the comic book interpretations, but in the films, traditionally, we get that toned down considerably.
Yeah, I think that's what it was like. I don't think this is necessarily a departure from who Wolverine's character is. I think it's just seeing it. I was like, I don't know. I don't think I will be playing this game.
Yeah, I do wonder about that, right? Because you think about this game is being obviously targeted, you would think, to a broad audience. Mm-hmm. And are there going to be parents who see a trailer for this game and say, you're not playing that?
I wouldn't buy that for my kid. Depending on how old that kid is, I would absolutely not. Sorry.
Yeah, so I could see that being problematic. I will say the gameplay looked really cool. It looked fun and everything. But yeah, I can see that being a problem for some people looking at it. They also showed a new trailer for Saros. That is the new game from Housemarque. That is coming in March of next year. I thought this trailer looked really cool to me. Tons of particle effects just going off constantly during it. Maybe not the most amazing environments, but like the particle effects all going off while running at a steady, what looked like 60 frames a second, was really graphically impressive to me. I like Housemarque's games. I like their sort of kind of, we're going to make big budget games that feel like sort of classic Twitch arcade games. And so, yeah, I'm interested in playing this, and I think this trailer made me very interested where I hadn't been necessarily super excited for it beforehand. Neo 3 got a February 6th release date. February is going to be insane with the number of games coming out. I just feel like somebody's got to blink and move out of February because some games are going to get completely lost in that mix. Zero Parades got a 2026 release date. This is from members of the Disco Elysium team. I always forget, are these the people who left because the company that bought them was horrible? I think maybe that's it. That's why this does not have the Disco Elysium name attached to it.
I think that's the case.
But it is very much in that style.
Yeah.
So if you like Disco Elysium, this looks very much like the next game from those people. Chronoscript, The Endless End, got a 2026 release date. I thought this was just a game I don't think I've seen before. Looked really neat. It's about an editor who can jump into manuscripts and then it becomes a 2D side-scrolling action game.
I did a very quick skim of the state of play. This is the one that looked the most intriguing to me, at least. It looked pretty cool.
This game has style.
Its art style is very cool.
I feel like we say this all the time, but in this day and age with so many games coming out, if you don't have the big established IP, right, then you need something very stylistic that's going to grab people's attention.
It's going to set yourself apart from all the other games that are coming out. And I feel like this game has that.
Yeah. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is coming to PlayStation 5 on December 8th. Only notable that, hey, is a game with Microsoft in the title is coming out on PlayStation. So, kind of further driving home that point that everything Xbox is going everywhere at this point. Deus Ex is getting a remastered version on, again, February 5th, talking about February being overloaded. This is kind of neat. Probably will make this an easier way for people who have never played Deus Ex to play it for the first time. It doesn't look, it is very much a remaster. It is not a remake. It looks like a thin coat of paint slapped on top. But sometimes those older games, even though there's not a huge graphical upgrade, they're very difficult to get running on modern computers or other, certainly access via other platforms. So at least this will make it more accessible. And Halloween got a September 8th release date for next year, which seems perfect. Kick off the beginning of spooky season with this Halloween game. This is coming from the team at Ilphonic who did the Friday the 13th game. So very good at those sort of asymmetrical type horror games that they've been working on. That one we've talked about before, but it does have a single player mode. So that, they're trying to expand the market for who might be interested in this. And last bit of detail here, Rock Band 4 is being delisted this weekend with its DLC, so the songs to follow. This is simply a thing of, hey, when you buy music rights, those are for a limited amount of time. Mm-hmm. This will mark 10 years, which is sort of makes sense. You originally bought those rights for 10 years. Yeah. You can no longer sell that base package with those songs included because you don't have the right to sell those songs anymore. Mm-hmm. But it's also sad because when this goes off sale, there's no more Rock Band. And there's nothing comparable, right? There's not a Guitar Hero or something else out there. So it is maybe truly the end of the band game, which was such a big deal.
Yeah, it was huge. Like that was, we think, we talk about like party games. That was like one of the top party games out there. I mean, like it wasn't just a party game, of course, but like that was the one that you could break out something different and everybody could play it, right? Because if you weren't that good, who cares, right? It's about it was truly like this is about having fun.
Yeah, the number of people when I would break that out who would be like, I want to play drums, because how many people have ever actually played drums?
Yeah.
Right? Like a guitar, you sort of like, most people have picked up and strummed a guitar before, but a lot of people have never played drums. And so it was just like that wish fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there should be a market. There should be some way to make these sorts of games today and be profitable. And it's kind of insane that it's not. Those games were really great for introducing classic rock to a new generation.
Sure.
And so even just from a marketing perspective, you sort of feel like, Spotify, do you want to get in and make this? Because this is a way to make people aware of music they're not currently listening to. Mm-hmm. I don't know. A sad day, because when your plastic instruments break, it getting very difficult to replace them anymore. All right, that does it for news. So let's move into our big question. And since this is October 1st, the beginning of official spooky season, I guess, as we count down to Halloween, what video game would you most want to see a haunted house of? So if you could take any video game and turn it into a haunted house, like a realistic haunted house that you might see at Universal Studios or someplace like that, what would you want to see a haunted house based on? What video game?
So I don't know if it would be the full game, but I think the first one that came to mind was like the Shadow Temple or the Well from Ocarina of Time. You've got like the Redeads and the Gibdos, that kind of lock your camera, and they've got the Shriek, and just very eerie locations in that game.
Hand coming out of the wall and grabbing you.
Sure. Yeah.
Trying to get down a hallway where that's happening and they're playing the sound effects.
And even some of the other, really a lot of the adult dungeons, the Forest Temple's got some eeriness to it. Obviously you've got the Poe sisters, but I think while maybe again, not the full game, there are some segments of that game that I think would do pretty well as a haunted house.
Yeah, I feel like Ocarina of Time is, certain Zelda games have always had elements of kind of horror, but Ocarina of Time, they really leaned into it.
Yeah, because the other one that I think you could do more of the full game that I was thinking of would be Majora's Mask.
Right, sure. Because that entire game is creepy and weird.
Yeah. But I don't have as much experience with Majora's Mask, whereas Ocarina of Time, I do. I think that one you could do some pretty cool things with.
Yeah, no. I actually did think about Zelda because there are those sort of like horror elements that have persisted through the Zelda games over the years, which are I always think kind of interesting and well known enough, right?
Sure.
Like people are familiar. I try to think of what would be just really sort of existentially like horrific if you were playing a game. So like something that people would not think of traditionally, it's easy to think, oh, well, let's make a Dead by Daylight.
Sure.
We'll go ahead and throw that out there for Christina or a DBD.
Yeah. You can now refer to it as DBD.
Yeah. We've done our first mention. But anyway, so like stuff like that, I think makes, pretty straightforward sense. I did think about, some of those like sort of classic horror games, like, okay, you could translate that. But I try to think of something that you wouldn't think of, but if it were actually translated into a haunted house would be horrific. And I thought of Glover. I thought if there was like a giant hand chasing me through a house, like how utterly like terrifying that is, and like throwing giant beach balls at me constantly. It wouldn't be scary like monsters and everything, but it would be kind of scary of like this, fun house from hell sort of situation. So I was trying to think of things of that nature that would be something you wouldn't necessarily expect to be turned into a haunted house.
Yeah, I was thinking, I think there are a number of like, they're not scary, but like a lot of those like walking simulators that just like the environmental storytelling that happens in those games, that you could take something from those. And I think just the like you doing the actual walking around a space would make this very sort of odd or eerie feeling in there.
Yeah, what's the one I'm thinking of? Just Home?
Gone Home.
Gone Home.
Yeah.
Gone Home.
That's the one that came to mind for me as well. I mean, it's not a horror game, but as you are walking through this house, you learn of all the horrific things that are happening, that are happened in it, right?
Yeah, and I think that game is horrific as you're playing it because you don't know where it's going.
Yes.
Like if somebody hasn't told you where that game is going, and I always think like the ending of that game is possible to miss one of the notes. And if you don't read that note, then your understanding of the ending is changed.
Yeah.
And I remember getting to the end of that game and feeling like a sort of rush of, oh my God, I know where this is all leading and what am I going to find there? And like sort of dreading it, but also like I need to run and get there to like find the ending. And I think that game builds an incredible atmosphere. I know it doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
But, that sort of tension.
Yeah, I think Firewatch does that. I mean, it's very different, but
right. Sure.
You kind of like, it does some breadcrumbing in a really good way where it's like, and that one is kind of the opposite, where it's like, you kind of know what's coming and then it eventually comes and you're like, yeah. And
right.
you have it, it creates this, I don't know, whatever the sensation is that those games, when they pay off really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, that's really that sort of makes sense as a haunted house because that's what you're doing, right? You're walking through a haunted house. You're not interacting. So taking a walking simulator and sort of adapting that, right? Something like a Gone Home of a haunted house that you're walking through and you are experiencing a continuous story.
Yeah.
As you go through to the end and you are building up the dread of how does this story pay off.
And I think that's very different than what we tend to get as haunted houses of just like having a person jump out and scare you.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much more difficult to achieve, I would guess.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, cool. That's our big question for the week. Thank you, Mario, for joining me. Thank you for those listening. As always, you can check out more content by going to salukigames.com. If you have questions or comments on the podcast, you can, if you have a suggestion for the big question, you can always send that to me at justin.young@siu.edu. We love to get those and use those for the podcast. And that does it for this week. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Have a great week. Take care of yourself. Play something fun, and we'll be back soon to talk to you about games.